Today I'm visiting St Gallgo's Church in Wales. It's a place with a dark history. There are only a few hundred burials in the churchyard, but 140 of those are of people who died on the same day in 1859. Drivers driving past the churchyard at night have reported seeing a tall, dark figure walking along the boundary wall of the churchyard. Some people believe that the rector, Roose Hughes, also haunts the churchyard. There is also a connection between the church and the author Charles Dickens, as well as the Irish singer Sinead O'Connor. The oldest part of the church dates to the 15th century, but the church was established in the 6th or 7th century. I've got no idea if it's going to be open or not. Let's try it. Oh. Look. The church is associated with the 1859 wreck of the Roval Charter. The Roval Charter was travelling from Australia to Liverpool when it was shipwrecked near the village of Moelfre in Ynys Môn. Over 440 passengers and crew lost their lives. Because the tiny village couldn't handle the scale of the disaster, St Gallgo's church was completely cleared out and turned into a temporary mortuary. Dozens upon dozens of waterlogged, battered bodies were laid side by side on the church floor. Many of them weren't identified and had to be buried in a mass grave in the churchyard. The local rector at the time, Reverend Roose Hughes, took it upon himself to wash the bodies, look for identifying features and preserve what few possessions the victims had left. He personally wrote over 1,000 letters to frantic families looking for loved ones. The author Charles Dickens actually travelled to Ynys Môn to stay with the rector and write about his incredible compassion. The essay that he wrote is called The Shipwreck. And there's a memorial for the unidentified victims here. This monument has been erected by public subscriptions to the memory of those who perished on the wreck of the Roval Charter off Moelfre on the coast of Anglesey. Anglesey is the Viking name for Ynys Môn. I try not to use it myself. On her passage from Australia to England, Wednesday, the 26th day of October, 1859. Says something here as well, but it's very difficult to read. But this part here you can read. There lie in this churchyard the remains of 140 of the something and 45 in the churchyard of Penrhosllygwy, all of whom were buried by Roose Hughes, the Reverend Stephen Roose Hughes, and his brother, the Reverend Robert Hughes. And something else on this side. The remains of many of something lie near the following churches, and it goes on to name another 4 churches. An anchor from the Roval Charter is actually by the doorway of the church. there's a plaque here that's been placed here in 2019 by family members of some people who perished in the disaster in memory of Catherine Russell, 1849 to 1859, who lies here. Also her mother Elizabeth, born 1827, and her sister Jeannie, born 1857. So one of them was, the children were 10 and around 2, and it says, who were not recovered from the wreck of the Royal Charter, 26th of October 1859. We've got the name of a James Russell, husband and father, survived. This memorial is placed by Jennifer Russell Reid, great niece of James Russell. There's a grave of another victim by the anchor here. Sacred to the memory of George Edmund Fancombe Hatch, surgeon of Farnham Royal Berks, who perished in the wreck of the Royal Charter on the morning of the 26th of October 1859, aged 39. He was a kind friend, father and husband. His last moments were passed in cheering his companions in misfortune. Another plaque here, which was placed here in 2004 in memory of Manus Maurice Boyle, miner, 1833 until 1859, never recovered from the Royal Charter, placed here by the Fay family, Hasselton, Pennsylvania, USA, 2004. Grave of another victim here who was identified, although it doesn't say much on the headstone. F.F. Hutton died October 26, 1859. Back by the memorial for the unidentified victims, just noticed this grave. Here lies the bodies of Henry Emery, aged 31, and of John, his brother, aged 29, who perished in the wreck of the Royal Charter. To the memory of James Davis, who died aged 52, and of Louisa Francis, his wife, aged 49, and their children, Sophia, aged 16, Florence, aged 15, Walter, aged 11, and Derwent, aged 9, also of Ellen Fenwick, aged 33, and her 4 children, all perished in the Royal Charter on the 26th of October 1859. So you've got 11 victims of the disaster buried in this single grave. Okay, I've had a look online for the grave of the Reverend Stephen Hughes, and I think it's this grave here. Sacred to the memory of Reverend Stephen Roose Hughes. For 10 years, rector of Llanigrad and Llanallgo, he was a faithful pastor, a warm-hearted friend and charitable to the poor. He died February 4th, 1862, aged 47. The Royal Charter disaster took a heavy toll on his health, and he died 3 years after the disaster. I'll try and read this bit on the other side. The inscription reads as follows: His noble and disinterested excursions on the memorable occasion of the terrible wreck of the Royal Charter are well known throughout the world. The subsequent effects of those excursions proved too much for his constitution and suddenly brought him to an early grave. At the start of the video I mentioned that there was a connection between the church and Sinead O'Connor. The church was actually where she got married to journalist Nick Summerland in 2001. I understand that his family lived nearby. This is one of a number of churchyards on the island which are said to be haunted. People claim to have seen a tall figure walking in the churchyard as they're driving past. So I've just been to the car, and it's a long shot, but I'm going to try an EMF meter here in case we get any spikes on it. At some point in the history of the church, renovations were being made, and bones of a tall man, around 8 foot tall, were found. The theory is that these bones were removed from the church and buried elsewhere, and this is why a giant ghost is wandering the churchyard. And it's possible that these bones that they discovered weren't human at all. In the 18th and 19th centuries, during renovations of old churches like this, workers frequently dug up ancient bones. Often what people thought were human giant bones actually belonged to prehistoric animals like mammoths or even whale bones. Okay, I got nothing on the EMF meter on this occasion. It's always worth a try, because there's been a number of occasions where people have told me that a place is haunted, and I have actually had EMF spikes. I almost forgot to mention the bell of the church. They believe that it predates the church, and they think that it dates from the late 1200s. So it may have been the bell of an earlier church that was on the site. And there's an imprint of a coin from the 1200s on the bell.